Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. I'm thrilled that Minister Flynn is here to join us in Barrie to discuss the Fair Workplaces, Better Jobs Act. As chair of the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs, I have had the opportunity to travel all around this province with my colleagues, listening to the feedback on this bill from voices on all sides of the issue. I can say with confidence that the minister has crafted a groundbreaking bill that will make life in Ontario a little fairer for all workers. We know that the economy in Ontario is strong. Just last week, Statistics Canada released their monthly job numbers, and in 15 municipalities tracked, Barrie has the lowest unemployment in Ontario. And it's the second lowest in the country with 3.4%, less than half of what it was only a year ago. That is amazing. We're doing very well here in Barrie. This translates to over 17,000 jobs in our community in the last year alone. Province-wide, this is a 17-year low. It is also important to note that more than 90% of the jobs created last month are full-time. That hasn't happened in a long time. In short, this is the perfect time for our government to ensure that everyone has a chance to experience the benefits of our strong economy. Kevin Flynn has created a bill that will do just that. Prior to being elected to Queen's Park, Kevin owned a successful Oakville-based business while serving as an Oakville Town and Halton Regional Councillor for over 18 years and winning 6 consecutive elections. I hope I can do 2. He has always been active in the community as the president of the Halton Children's Aid Society, a mentor of the Big Brothers program, and a coach of minor sports. He was elected to the legislature in 2003 and served as parliamentary assistant to 8 different ministries before being made a member of cabinet in 2014. With that, I would like to welcome the MPP for Oakville and our province's Minister of Labour, the Honourable Kevin Flynn.
Thank you. That was very nice of you. Well, it certainly is a pleasure to be here today, and thanks to each and every one of you that have taken some time out of your own day to be here for what I think is a very interesting issue, and what I think is an issue that really impacts on people's lives throughout the province of Ontario. Now, those of you that follow politics will know that when you become a cabinet minister, you would get a letter from the Premier, excuse me, and it's called a mandate letter. And basically, it sets out what she or he expects you to do. And usually that mandate letter is sent privately. But this Premier Kathleen Wynne, thought, well, the entire province should know what we're supposed to do, and decided that these mandate letters would be public. And what she asked me to do, she said, you know, Kevin, we haven't looked at the Employment Standards Act and we haven't looked at the Labour Relations Act since the 1990s. Go out there and see if it's still relevant in terms of a 2017 economy. So we did that. We hired 2 very capable people to go out and to talk to the people of Ontario, to begin a conversation with people. We hired Mike Mitchell, who was a lawyer with a tremendous background in employment law, primarily from the employee or the organized labor side of things. We hired John Murray, a former judge that has written extensively on employment law, mainly from an employer side of things. Now, the good thing about it is that these guys enjoyed each other's company. They loved being with each other. They had a different worldview, perhaps, but they liked being with each other. They traveled the province and they talked to people and they talked about their experiences. They talked to business. They talked to poverty advocates. They talked to organized labor and anybody that really wanted to share an opinion with them. And what they found is that something that we had suspected for some time had taken place. In that the world of work that I entered as a young man, or the rules that applied in the 90s, simply didn't apply to the economy today. My expectation as a young man entering the workforce was I would get a full-time job. It would be a permanent job. It would have some benefits attached to it, hopefully, maybe even a pension. And I might change that job 2 or 3 times over a career. Then I'd retire and play golf for the rest of my life, or whatever happens when you retire. But you look today, you look to 2017, and you look what young people entering the workforce see today, and it's entirely different. What you see is contract work, you see temporary work, you see part-time work, and you never see that security, or you don't often see that security that used to accompany a lot of other jobs. We see the increased use of temporary help agencies, for example. So you would get a job through an agency, they would take a little piece of your paycheck every week, and you would work on in a precarious position or a temporary position permanently, if you can put those two words together. So when they came back, they said, yes, Kevin, things have changed out there, and they made a series of recommendations. What they said to us is that we're seeing an increased use, as I said, of temporary help agencies, increasing at about 3.5% a year. So people aren't getting that permanent job anymore. They're having to be brokered into a job. And when you think 3.5% year over year, that doesn't really sound like a lot. You do that 10 years in a row, or you do that 15 years in a row, and you could see the shift of an entire workforce into temporary work if we didn't do something about that. People were coming and saying, you know what, I'm afraid to take a day off work. I get sick sometimes, or my child gets sick sometimes, and either I'm not paid enough, or if I did take the day off, I wouldn't get paid, and I just can't take the time off. So I go to work sick, or I send my child to school sick, or I get our child care arrangements includes me sending the child that I know is sick to the child care center. So there was a number of things that came up that we realized that we really needed to change the rules, that we needed to bring the rules into line. Now, I told the advisors at the time, I said, don't look at the minimum wage. I said, we've got a pretty good process in place there. It seems to be working. What had happened in somewhere around 2011, I think we got some groups together and decided on a process where we would increase the minimum wage on a regular basis based on the rate of inflation year after year. That had predictability attached to it, and it had fairness attached to it. So I said to the advisors, we seem to be pretty good in that regard. Well, the advisors couldn't go anywhere without running into the Campaign for Fairness or running into other folks that were just ordinary people who were saying, you don't live in Ontario on $11.40 an hour. It's physically impossible to do that. A living wage in Ontario is in excess of $15 an hour. Now, we used to think the minimum wage was something maybe a student would get. It would be a trainee wage. You would have it for a few months, and then you'd start to earn more. Or it was, it was a wage that students were saving up for a new bike for, or those very ordinary things we do. Well, what we found, to our dismay, and what shocked us, was about a third of the people in the province of Ontario, almost a third of the people in Ontario, were making less than $15 an hour. And out of those third of those people, half of those people were between the ages of 25 and 64. So that's not the kids saving up for the new bike anymore. That's people trying to raise families on a minimum wage, and it just simply does not add up. When you think about paying rent, we're talking about affordability of rent here in Barrie and throughout the province of Ontario. Think in terms of rent, you think in terms of going to the grocery store and buying food, clothes for the kids, shoes for the kids, diapers for the baby, those very, very ordinary things. You simply do not do that on $11.40 an hour. So what we said, we came back, we said, okay, we do need to look at the minimum wage, along with the other changes that we're proposing for the province of Ontario. And I was so proud in the House the other day with support from the New Democratic Party and obviously support from my government and sadly opposition from the Progressive Conservatives. Patrick Brown and the Progressive Conservatives did not support this bill. But what the bill does is it really lifts a lot of people in the province of Ontario out of poverty. It allows people that go to work and put in 35, 40 hours a week, sometimes more than that, sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs to accumulate those hours. It allows them the dignity and the respect that goes along with being able to support yourself and support your kids and your family. That's what this is really all about. That's what the changes are all about. There's a lot of regulations attached to it. It's a bill itself. It's an act itself. But it really is about people. It's about working people living and working every day and just wanting what everybody in this room wants as well, and that is just the ability to look after themselves, to have the dignity that goes along with that, and to have the security, knowing that the income they're earning is going to be enough to support their family. So what we said in the province of Ontario, as of January the 1st of 2018, the minimum wage will rise to $14 an hour. We'll also be bringing in a student wage as well, will rise proportionately. And then January 1st of 2019, it will go to $15 an hour. That's something that the Campaign for Fairness throughout North America has been asking for some time. This is not something unique to Ontario. This is something we're seeing in Seattle and San Francisco and New Jersey and New York City and New York State and New Orleans. They all begin with new. There may be something to that. I just realized that. We're seeing it in Alberta. We're seeing it in British Columbia. We're seeing it in other states as well. This is something that I think ordinary people throughout North America are saying basically, what about me? Isn't it time that the person that just gets out of bed in the morning and goes and does a job, isn't it time that I got something out of this? Isn't it time that I got some attention? Because goodness knows, after 2008, 2009, probably the most severe financial crisis that I've been through as an individual. I'm not old enough to have lived through the Depression, but I hear it was pretty rotten. But certainly what happened in 2008, 2009, where people were starting to lose a third of their savings, and there was fear that the banks might collapse and a host of other things. Since 2008, a lot of people have been helped. A lot of businesses being helped, a lot of auto companies have been helped just to try to stabilize the economy, insurance companies. And I think the ordinary person was sitting there and watching all this happening going, I'm struggling too. I'm having a tough time too. I'm just an ordinary person that wants to raise a family, maybe someday buy a car, maybe even buy a house, maybe see my kids off to school, off to university or to college, or to do something that I wasn't able to do. And what this bill does is it really enables them to do that. And just let me close with some of the details. We found in the province of Ontario we weren't treating ourselves very well when it came to vacations. And we're a hard-working province, we're industrious, that's why we've got the economic success we have today. But we weren't even up to the Canadian average when it came to vacation. So what the old rules of the Employment Standards Act said, didn't matter how long you worked for somebody, you got 2 weeks a year. Work there 25 years, and all you're really entitled to is 2 weeks a year. The vast majority of employers in the province of Ontario are excellent people, excellent organizations, smart enough to realize that if you treat your employees well, they'll work hard for you, and you'll be a much more profitable and productive company. But there were still some that said, no, 2 weeks is all I've got to give you, 2 weeks is all I'm giving you. What we've said is now at a minimum in the province of Ontario, you work for the same company for 5 years, you get 3 weeks pay. 3 weeks vacation. That's simple, or 6% of your earnings. We also said, when I was talking earlier about temporary help agencies, and people wanting to work for this company but having to go through this agency to get into this company and losing a little bit of their pay along the way, what we've said is it doesn't matter where you work in the province of Ontario. If you're working alongside somebody that's doing essentially the same job, you should make the same amount of money, whether you're part-time or whether you're temporary. Concept of equal pay for equal work has been a tradition of Ontario that's been around, I think, forever, and it permeates through all three political philosophies in this province. It's something that we thought we should put into practice. Also, it used to be in the province of Ontario, if you worked for a company that was larger than 50 employees, you got 10 personal emergency leave days off. So you had the right to take 10 days off, whether it was to go to the lawyers, to attend a funeral, to look after a sick child, if you were sick yourself. Any of those things that crop up in our daily lives that often we're not anticipating, but are very normal human experiences, you had the ability to take 10 of those days per year with no retribution from your employer. If you worked for a company that was less than 50 employees, which is a lot of companies in the province of Ontario, you simply didn't have that right. What we said is that right should be available to everybody. And to go along with what I was talking about on sick time, that 2 of those days should be paid. The first 2 of those days should be paid. So if you have the flu, you've got a cold, you don't want to spread it to the other employees, you shouldn't be afraid to not go to work, at least for 2 of those days in a year. So these are the types of changes that we've made along the way to help people out: an increase in pay, increase in working conditions, and increase in the quality of the working conditions. Because in the province of Ontario, we're doing very, very well, as Anne said. We're leading the G7 in economic growth, and a lot of people go, well, that sounds good, but what's the G7? Well, the G7 is some pretty strong economic powerhouses that are out there: the UK, France, the States, Japan, some of the top economies in the world. Ontario is leading them right now. We've got an unemployment rate that what Anne has said there is absolutely true. We haven't seen unemployment numbers this low in almost 20 years. So the forecasts for Ontario are for continued economic growth, continued GDP growth. So the economy is doing very, very well. What we've come to realize, and why I'm here today to announce why this is going to be such a great change, is that as we were growing, as this prosperity was impacting on our province in a positive way, it was leaving a lot of people behind. So some people were doing very, very well, and some people were just sitting at the bottom thinking, how am I ever going to get out of this? And often it was people who were trying to establish themselves in this country. They were new Canadians. They were trying to figure out what it meant to be a Canadian, how they were going to find that job. Often it was people of color. It was women primarily who just weren't prospering. With the changes that we've made today, that we made last week and will come into effect as of January the 1st, we're going to see a huge impact, I think, in the everyday lives of working people in the province of Ontario. Just want to close with one other thing. Yesterday was a day of remembrance, December 6th, for the women who were killed in Montreal in 1989 by a gunman. We remember that every year. There's also an element of this bill, is that we said that in the province of Ontario, if you find yourself in that living hell that is domestic abuse and sexual violence within the house, and you're trying to get out of that, you need to deal with that somewhere. You've got to go to the hospital, you've got to talk to the police, you've got to go to the lawyer, you've got to find other housing, you've got to get to the shelter. All those rotten things that go along with having to do that, but is the only way out of that abuse. We're saying in the province of Ontario now, if you find yourself in that position, you get 10 days off work, and you also get 15 weeks to deal with that as well. And the first 5 of those days will be paid as well. So we're thinking we've established something in the province of Ontario that's going to assist people to make a move that really we hope a lot of other people should be making, and we need to make it easy for women and their families to leave those. So we built that right into the Act as well. So all in all, I hope you'll agree with me that it's been a major change for this province. It's been something that people have been asking us to do for a long time. It's going to be challenging for some businesses. We understand that. So just in the fall economic statement, we suggested that the corporate tax rate for small business be reduced. And we're also assisting in the hiring process for those entry-level jobs, people that want to hire trainees, apprentices, people that are just trying to get a foot in the door, young people. So we're going to start to increase our grants to those companies to encourage them to continue doing that hiring. As I said, the vast majority of employers in the province of Ontario, excellent organizations, great people to work for. There's a subset, there's a smaller group of companies in the province of Ontario that think that the rules apply to everybody else but don't apply to them, and if somehow they can skirt the rules, that they will do that to their own ends. To make sure that doesn't happen, we also said what people said to me, well, Flynn, you can bring in all these rules and regulations. If you don't enforce them, they don't mean anything at all. So what we've also said is we're going to hire another 175 employment standards inspectors that are going to start doing proactive visits around the province so the business understands what the rules are. We're going to educate them as to how they can easily comply with these rules. But all in all, it's a great day for the province of Ontario. As I said, I wish we'd had the support of the entire House, because I really think that this speaks to the entire province of Ontario. In fact, the Leader of the Opposition didn't even show up for the vote, so it's not that he didn't vote. It's not that he would have voted against it had he been here. He didn't have the decency to show up, and I thought that was a real slap in the face to working people in Ontario after a lot of people in this room as well had worked so hard to get this plan put into place. So thanks for having me today in Barrie. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Well, I think you can see from listening to Kevin Flynn the quality of the person that we are very happy to have as our Minister of Labour. He is very fair and has worked very hard to make some compromises from the original bill to put in place an excellent bill that will be fair to everyone. You know, I've had some calls from small businesses very upset about the minimum wage going up and saying they're going to go out of business. My message to them is, if you're going to go out of business because on the backs of your employees, because you can't afford to pay them this, then perhaps you should reassess your business plan and reassess whether you should be an employer at all. I think that's very important. You know, often in politics you hear that it's the right thing to do. You hear that a lot and you go, yeah, the right thing to do, but we're not doing it. This is the right thing to do. At this point, I'm going to call on Dan Jansen, who is from the Campaign for 15 and Fairness. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you for allowing me to come here and speak today. My name is Dan Jansen, and I'm the Vice President of IAM Local Lodge 2323. We represent airport workers at Toronto Pearson International Airport. I'm also active with the Berrien District Labour Council, and I've been working hard as a community organizer with the 15 and Fairness campaign for almost 3 years. My involvement with this movement goes from educating people around the issues, and setting up rallies right here in Barrie and also at Pearson International. The most important part of this campaign was that it brought together various communities, student groups, and thousands of workers to bring fairness and decent work to Ontario. These changes to Ontario's labour laws and the increase to the minimum wage represent a historic step forward for workers in the province and right here in Barrie. The increase in the minimum wage will have a positive impact on an estimated 1.5 million workers. Low-wage workers that live right here in our community will benefit. We know that minimum wage earners spend most of their money right in their local communities. And by raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, it will stimulate Ontario's economy by putting more than $5 billion into workers' pockets. Local businesses right here will benefit from this increased spending power. Meaningful equal pay legislation helps to close the wage gap for women and workers of color, since these groups are more likely to work part-time. And making sure temp agencies pay workers the same rates as directly hired workers will also help curb the use of temp agency workers. This is a huge source of precarity in our labour market. We also need to make sure temp agency workers get health and safety protections, the same as regular workers on the job. New rules will allow workers to decide between going to work or staying home when they're sick, or staying home to take care of a child or a family member. For many, 10 days of job-protected emergency leave, 2 of them paid, will give them peace of mind to make the right decision. I'm really proud to have been part of this amazing team that built up a movement centered around decent work and fairness in the workplace. We recognize this historic victory for workers, but our work is not done. Our movement will continue to push to close exemptions and loopholes in the Employment Standards Act to ensure that all workers are fully protected by these minimum standards. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. As Dan was saying, the money that these workers are going to make is going to go right back into our communities. They are not going to book a trip to the Cayman Islands, but they might be able to take their child tubing out at Snow Valley. At this point, I'd like to call on Brandon Day. Brandon is with Community Builders.
Thank you. My name is Brandon Day. I am the co-founder and a partner at Community Builders, which is a social enterprise construction company with a heart for affordable housing. I just wanted to say, as a small business owner, I understand the challenges in wage increases. But today, I'm hoping to be an encouragement to others when I say your people are worth it. We have been a living wage company since we began only a year and a half ago. It didn't exist in Simcoe County at that time, but we took some averages around this area because it's something that meant a lot to us, and we feel like we're very happy with that choice. As an owner, I've always believed in sharing what I have with the people around me that make that possible. I think we would all agree working is supposed to bring a person out of poverty, not keep them in it. Try not only to see this as a cost to your business, but a cost savings as well. The pay increase gives your employees an increased sense of self-worth and makes them feel like part of the team. This in turn leads to more productivity, less turnover, and training costs, and creates a generally happier and healthier workplace and environment for your team. So I want to challenge others today to take some time to creatively think on how they can meet these new standards and invest in the people, which I believe will make your business thrive and create an overall happier and healthier city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brandon. A very important message. And I don't know that everyone knows the difference between a living wage and a minimum wage. A living wage is actually, there is a group that figures out what the minimum wage or the living wage is for each city and town around Ontario. And I think Barrie's is $17.74, which is, as you can see, higher than what we're doing. However, all of the, I think Sarnia, is it Sarnia or Chatham? The municipality of Chatham has already passed a motion, and they have been paying their people a living wage for some time. And there are many groups around the province that are doing that and have found that it leads to better productivity, more loyalty, less training costs for employees, and you have much happier, loyal workers. So that's it. Brandon was talking about the living wage, so I thought I should tell you what the difference was. I now call upon Jennifer Van Gennep, the Simcoe County Poverty Reduction Task Group. Jennifer.
Good morning, Minister Flynn and MPP Hogarth and our other honored guests and colleagues. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Jennifer Van Gennep, and I'm here today as a member of the Simcoe County Poverty Reduction Task Group, which is a working group under the Child, Youth and Family Services Coalition here in Simcoe County. We, last month, were the group that launched the Living Wage campaign here in Simcoe County once our calculation had been completed at $17.74. At the Poverty Reduction Task Group, we believe that work should lift people out of poverty and that anyone working a full-time job should be able to afford the basic necessities of life without having to make difficult choices between paying their bills and buying healthy food for themselves and their families. One of the most effective ways to lift working people out of poverty is to simply pay them more. And according to the Canadian Centre of Policy Alternatives, this raise in minimum wage is going to bring the biggest benefit for our most vulnerable and precarious workers, most of who are 25 or older. The service and tourism industry in Simcoe County is very large, and more than half of the workers in retail, food, and accommodation sectors are going to get a raise on January 1st. Simcoe County is a great place to live, and the provisions in the Fair Workplaces, Better Jobs Act will go a long way toward allowing more of our citizens to participate fully in our community, taking in a Barrie Colts hockey game with their friends, finally being able to afford to enroll in a course in one of our local colleges, afford swimming or piano lessons for their children for the first time, or simply buy winter tires to keep them safe on our snowy roads. Money put in the wallets of our lowest wage earners returns back into our local economy quickly, which is echoing what everyone else has said. That's the thinking about going last. These types of income security improvements, stacked on top of the recently increasing efforts at all 3 levels of government to stabilize families and individuals into affordable housing, will benefit not only those receiving the minimum wage increases, but will also benefit our economy and our community. The Poverty Reduction Task Group is happy to support the Fair Workplaces, Better Jobs Act. So thank you, Minister Flynn.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. And thank you to all our speakers. And now, if Minister Flynn, if you come back up, we'll now take questions from the media. You'll take questions.
If there are any.
Any questions? Anyone?
I have a question, Mr. Flynn. You mentioned that the process that you had probably would have been indexing this, the minimum pay with the inflation.
That's right.
And you decided not to. But in 2019, it's going to be $15 an hour. But the problem that I see as a small business owner myself is this. I recorded that 11:45 is my hour for people to leave. I think it's a shame for our province, it's a shame for our country, really, that the people cannot survive with the work they do. I don't agree with that.
Right.
But what I want to see, because this is going to happen, let's say in 2019 it's going to be $15 an hour. And then by 2020, we're going to end up in the same problem. How about we can indexing the minimum pay with the inflation in 2020 going on? That way people like myself with the small business can forecast what's going to be the increase for the next year.
Well, it's nice to have a question where you have a good answer for it, and the answer is we agree with you completely, and that's exactly what we're doing. Is as of 2019, when it goes to 15 an hour, April the 1st of 2019, what we'll look is whatever the inflation was for 2018, we'll apply that to the minimum wage. October the 1st of 2019, there will be, probably a smaller incremental increase to the minimum wage. So the idea is that it keeps up with inflation. That's what we liked about the old system. We liked the system. We didn't like the base. We didn't like the amount of money, but we liked the way it was being done. And I think business, for the most part, liked the way it was being done. People liked it. They got a raise. It kept up with inflation. Politicians liked it as well because it kept that political debate. It just happened automatically. It was something that people were entitled to. So while we're making this adjustment now to bring it up to close to a living wage, we also want to keep one of the best features of it, and that was indexing it to inflation. So that's exactly what we're doing.
I just have one more comment that people say about a lot of business cannot afford to hire more. Actually, the province is going to save a lot of money because people which is in welfare, now they're going to leave the welfare and put them to work. I think this is a great idea because a lot of people are just talking about the losing jobs, but how about the number of people is going to get back into the market?
And we found, that's perfectly true. We also find out that people that earn at the lower end of the income scale spend their money within days. People who are earning minimum wage probably don't even have a savings account because there's nothing to save. I mean, you get that money in, it goes to the landlord, it goes to the grocery store, it goes to maybe a car payment or something like that, but it's spent within days. It's not stashed away somewhere. It has an immediate impact on the economy. So there's so many benefits to this. And there was some economists that came forward and told us, well, I don't think you should be doing this. There was far more economists came forward and said, this is the best thing for your economy. Every example that they gave me is every time we've increased the minimum wage, we've seen improved economic conditions that follow. You think from some of the doom and gloom predictions that it would be the opposite, but it just isn't.
Yes, Chris.
Hi, Chris Simon, Barrie Advance. Thank you for taking my question, Minister Flynn. There was a photo circulating around social media not too long ago about a Barrie butcher who was saying that he was closing up shop after 30 years, blaming the Wynne government, mostly to do with hydro bills, but other factors like the minimum wage factored into his decision. What is your response to him and to the people circulating that photo who believe there's some legitimacy to his concerns.
Well, I mean, we really are supportive of small business in the province of Ontario. We're supportive of all business in the province of Ontario. I think the Wynne government has an excellent track record when it comes to working with chambers of commerce, working with business associations, manufacturers and exporters, everybody that drives this economy. I mean, if things were so bad, we wouldn't be leading the G7 in economic growth. I mean, you've really got to inject a dose of reality into that. We wouldn't have low unemployment numbers if things were so bad. Individual businesses have to make their own minds up as to how they approach this. And some people from the business community have stepped forward and said, I can't do this, I don't want to do this, I disagree with this. And consumers, I think, will form their own opinions as to where they shop, who they choose to associate with, and everybody's entitled to a free opinion in Ontario, and we sort of welcome that. I'll put the track record of this government when it comes to growing our economy up against any other in the country and any other in the past 50 years in this province. So if this gentleman is struggling, there are places that he could go, there's places he could talk to. We're always providing aid to small business should they need it. Certainly in the agricultural sector, certainly when I talk to people that are in the when I talk to the cattlemen, for example, they're very pleased with the Wynne government. They're very pleased with the economic growth in this province. So always happy to talk to anybody. He might want to contact the Ministry of Economic Development and Growth, see if there's any way that we could assist him. But I think what ordinary people in this province, ordinary consumers, like to think they're shopping, they're spending their money at a company that doesn't have to pay their people poverty level wages in order to survive.
I'm just going to add to this, and Chris, I think you know and I know what that blip was all about. The gentleman who is closing his business was one of the nominees running to run in the election for the BC government. And also what very upset me was that the new Chamber of Commerce, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, immediately said, a lot of businesses are going to close. And the funny thing was the next day the job numbers came out. You don't see other butchers closing. And I think you have to consider the source of that news blip and talk to other businesses around.
Hi, Susan Gambatti from Barrie Today. Thanks for taking my question. I just wondered, why are you here in Barrie for this today? Are you going around the province doing this type of thing, or is there a particular secret opposition or more opposition to this in Barrie? Anne just mentioned the head of the Chamber of Commerce. We've had the head of the food bank come out and say that the increase would be a disaster. So I guess my question is, why are you here in Barrie today?
Well, I'm on my way to Waypoint. One is I'm paying a visit to the folks up in Penetang, and as my former parliamentary assistant, and she was a very, very good parliamentary assistant. And yes, I have been traveling the province, talking to people, engaging people, and walking right into chambers of commerce. I'll tell you, it's an interesting discussion when you talk to the chambers. You'll sit around a table, everyone will express their usually sort of reticence about doing this. And then afterwards, when you're having the social part of it, I'll come up and say, my son's going through exactly what you're talking about. My son is, is 35 and he can't get a full-time job. He's had 5 contracts. He can't go and get a mortgage because the bank won't give him a mortgage. It's interesting the business perspective on this and the human perspective on this are 2 different things, 2 different messages. But really, I think that the human side of this comes out. So there's no scheme or secret plot here. I'm just here because I'm traveling the province talking about the benefits of Bill 148, and we'll be going up and talking to the workers up at Waypoint after I leave here.
Okay. Yes, Mike.
Just picking up on what my colleagues have been asking. So we've done a number of stories since the government has first announced this, and we've spoken to several businesses along Main Street here, Belmont Street here in downtown Barrie. Some in favor, others saying we will cut shifts or cut hours or lay off or eventually close. So maybe, I know what Ms. Goldberg, you've already alluded to, but Minister, I'd like to hear from you your thoughts on businesses that are saying they will closeout shop of cut hours when the government is saying this will actually stimulate the economy?
Well, obviously, we listen to all the advice we can, and that includes the chambers of commerce and small business themselves. We talk to economists that study this not only in Ontario, but throughout the country, throughout the continent, and we try to balance those interests. We try to put that all together and say, okay, what makes the most sense here? What's the most likely outcome from us doing this? And where I fall, and I think our government falls, the opposition party and Patrick Brown has taken the other side of the equation on this and isn't supporting working people. Where we've fallen is that past trends in this would indicate that it is actually a very good thing for the economy. If you look at the last time the province of British Columbia made a change like this, Fraser Institute, very Patrick Brown, very doom and gloom, businesses are going to close. Sky is falling. Exactly the opposite happened. The BC economy grew in leaps and bounds. You look at what's happening down in Seattle, San Francisco, other places that are implementing it. When you look at what has happened every single time the United States has raised the federal minimum wage, the following year employment has gone up, not down. Businesses didn't close, they opened. So I think there's some people out there that are trying to fearmonger, I think, politically, for lack of a better word. We're trying to do the best thing for the economy. We're trying to do for the best thing for people that are working 35 and 40 hours a week and living in poverty. That's not what Ontario is about. That's not what Kathleen Wynne's Ontario is about, that's for sure. You put in that effort, that's why people move to this province from all four corners of the world. They didn't move here to live in poverty. They moved here to get ahead. We've got an economy that's going to allow them to do that. And we need to be very, very clear that if you put in the effort, you get enough to at least get by, you get enough to at least get out of poverty. So I just don't buy the doom and gloom predictions, and the vast majority of economists in this country don't buy them either.
I just want to say that the day after Minister Flynn announced the bill and that the bill was passed, there was a young woman on who looked to be about 26, 27. She had 2 degrees from a very well-known university, and she had 3 part-time jobs. None of them, it did not total up to 40 hours a week. She's living back with her parents, and she was asked to comment on it, and she said, "This is wonderful. I can give up at least one of my 2 jobs, and I will have time to look for employment in my field of learning." She said, "This is going to be great. I might even be able to afford to move out of my parents' home. Thank you so much."
I'm not media, but can I ask a question?
Sure.
No way, Yolanda, no way.
That's right, yeah, where's my check?
I'm the executive director of the Community Wellness Center. We work with the volunteers and with people with disabilities, visible and invisible. So we've called around and try to get volunteers in different organizations and even just part-time work. And some of the comments have been, personally I think this may promote volunteerism, but some of the comments that I've been getting from some of the businesses are you crazy? I'm not looking for any part-time staff with this new bill coming in. I'm going to be probably laying off staff because we're going to be cross-training them across the whole. Instead of employees doing just one job, they're going to be training across the board, which I think is a really good idea, right? It's good to know a lot of the functions in your work. So how will this bill impact people with disabilities who are, working small hours part-time? They're not highly skilled. Some of them are skilled, they can train in that, but will this impact those individuals who are just getting part-time work?
Well, I don't, Yolanda, buy into the premise that this is going to cause unemployment, that this is going to cause people to lose their jobs. In fact, I think it's exactly the opposite. The evidence is that it's exactly the opposite. I mean, we've raised the minimum wage since 2003. We've raised the minimum wage in this province by about 70%. It was frozen at $6.85 under the Conservative government for 10 years before we came into office. We've raised it by 70%. You would think that if these economists that are telling us we can't raise it by 20%, You think if or these politicians that are trying to fearmonger us into thinking that if you raise it by 20%, you'll see unemployment. If we didn't see it at 70, why would we see it at 20? You know, when you think, it just does not make sense. People may be angry that they have to pay more. I get that. People may have a fear of paying more and think this may impact my business. But I think at the end of the day, that people are going to do what it takes to do business in Ontario. It's a great place to do business. It's got one of the top markets in the entire world. You've just given a third of your population an increase in pay to go and spend in your business. And you're going to lay people off? That doesn't make sense to me. If I've got more customers coming in the door, I'm hiring staff. I'm not laying people off. So I don't want to get angry, but I just don't buy that thinking. It's just not based on reality.
Before we go on, I just wanted to make a comment because I see Dr. Gardner sitting there, head of the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit, and the evidence shows that people who live in poverty also are more likely to be ill, and that is a great cost to Ontario and to Canada. And to raise their self-esteem, to give them more money to eat healthy foods, to be able to afford healthy foods is so important. The other thing that I learned, and I did not know, you know, we talk about discrimination against religious groups, we talk about discrimination against LGBTQ people, we talk about that. The number one group that is discriminated against are people in poverty. A lot of people don't know that. So hopefully that will help in that area too. People in poverty really need to be lifted up. No one should be living in poverty in Ontario or in Canada. And that's what we're going to do. And don't get me wrong, I was raised a couple of blocks from here. This was Woolworths when I was a young girl. And my parents, they worked very hard. My father worked 40 years with the Ministry of, at the time, Lands and Forests, and he got up and was gone at 5 o'clock every morning and didn't get home till 5:30 at night. He worked very hard. My mother worked at the hospital over here and walked back. There was no such thing as two cars. You were lucky if the one car was working in order to get Dad out to Midhurst. But one of the worst things I ever saw was my dad broke into my piggy bank to get money to put gas in the car. They weren't wealthy, they were public servants, but they believed and passed on to me that if you are doing all right, you need to help other people. Not give away the house, not do that, but you need to take care of other people. I'll give you an example. The circus came to town here in Barrie, as it always did, and a fella, probably about 45 or 50, died suddenly of a heart attack. And he was going to be buried, and they couldn't find any family for him. So my mother and father went to the priest and said, it's the right thing to do. We will pay for his burial. They didn't have a lot of extra money, but in that case, they believed that he needed to have a Christian burial. So those are the kind of things you have to have a balance, and I think I'm a Libra too, besides being a liberal. The scales in that sign, zodiac sign, say it all. You have to balance things. And I think that's what this bill does. It balances things. We try to get to be a little fair.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming today.